Hey, boss. Oh, Jimothy, my boy. How's it going? Not great. Change Healthcare had a massive cyber attack. Okay. You know what Change Healthcare is, right? Yes. The company United Health Group bought for $8 billion? You'll have to be more specific. Change Healthcare. They handle 15 billion healthcare transactions every year. They make sure medical practices get paid. Yeah, that rings a bell. Well, this company that we own has access to 1 in 3 patient records in the US. This attack puts all those patients at risk. Yeah, okay. We could lose money because of this. We gotta do something. Timothy, this is unacceptable. Yeah, I know. 67,000 pharmacies use Change Healthcare. They can't check patient insurance benefits. They can't fill prescriptions. Oh man, this is not good. Entire hospital systems are unable to process patient billing because of this. What was that? Hospitals can't communicate with us. We can't process claims. Medical practices and physicians can't get reimbursed by us. Oh, man. You're happy about this? No. Yes, you are. Okay, maybe a little. This will seriously disrupt patient care. People could die from this. We're still collecting premiums, though, right? Protected patient information has been stolen from a company we own. This opens us up to legal action. Yeah, but we also own that company. What company? You know, the legal one. The federal government?
Well, all right.
Hey guys, how are you?
Let's
you
show them
gotta go
again.
back to YouTube and
Right.
push play.
Okay. All
He
right.
says,
The punchline.
"My God." Okay, so
All right.
now it's done.
All right. Sorry about that. I missed the punchline.
Yeah.
well.
All right. Well, thanks for joining. So hopefully you understood what was going on with that little creative video that we just played
Yeah.
as our opening intro to this particular broadcast, which I guess is a bookmark.
Yeah. I mean, it's by default a bookmark, I guess.
Right.
Whoa. All right.
You got to turn off YouTube completely.
Yep. Boy, I guess you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a while since you were in the driver's seat.
I know.
So
well, like I titled this, Change Healthcare, the most important story nobody is talking about.
Right. It is. It's the most important story that no one is talking about.
Right.
That's pretty. And, there's just a very few, just a handful of people that are talking about this.
Right.
Before we get into it, what I want to do is make sure that we're okay on all the streams.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Oh, okay. So you can just turn that down, and then
okay.
I'm checking on my phone anyway.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Okay.
So you actually named this Book of Hours
Presents. Yeah.
Oh,
and
okay.
Then and then in the show notes it says the most important story nobody's talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I have the chat open. So those of you who are watching us on YouTube or on Facebook, let us know if you can hear us.
I'm sure Rockfin or Rumble or Twitter, and any of the other platforms that we go live on.
Now, I don't know if we see the chats from Rumble or Rockfin, so unfortunately.
Probably, yeah. No, they come in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So as Julie's doing that, let me give you some background. So about 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to read a Twitter thread in a few minutes that really does a nice job of kind of summarizing what's going on. But let me give you the rundown. Most of you probably have not heard about the Change Healthcare. Hi, Liv, alive. Thank you. Good afternoon. The Change Healthcare is a company that's part of Optum, and which is part of United Health Group, which is like bigger than, like a lot of companies. They do like massive amounts of money in revenues. Julie was reading it the other day, and like compared to like the company that makes the chips that AI uses. Nope, can't remember the name of that company, but anyway, NVIDIA. Thank you. They do like $80 billion in revenue, and United Health Group does like $400 billion in revenue annually. So it's like a massive company. And Change Health Group is basically Change Healthcare, sorry, is more or less like a clearinghouse company. And what they do is they make it easy for companies, health companies, like say a doctor's office or practice, a hospital, anything from a small practice up to a large hospital can basically transact insurance through them into a system that basically the government set up years ago, allows them to talk to each other. So they basically have set it up so that third-party software companies that do specialized types of software for, say, family health practice or a dentistry or a yoga studio. I'm joking, but you get what I'm saying. It's specialized software that meets the needs of that particular type of business, to then hook into the Change Healthcare software, which then translates their information onto, and we didn't write it down, but what was it called? Do you remember?
It's a clearinghouse?
Yeah, no. What it's called EDI. EDI.
Oh, EDI
yeah,
versus ADI or API.
So
or
EDI is basically a common platform type language that allows different healthcare entities to talk to one another, and it's compliant with HIPAA. Okay, and so this is a software that, or a platform that isn't necessarily web friendly. It existed before the web, so it wasn't necessarily something that's easy to translate into, like, say, a browser experience. What Change Healthcare has done is use something called APIs. And what those are basically, think of them as modules that they can create and plug into place, which allows them to create customized software. They call it like bespoke software. So it's like configurable to each of their clients. So like I was talking about, all those third-party software companies can have a customized situation set up for them through the APIs that Change Healthcare have created. Okay. Change Healthcare then translates that information that comes in through those APIs into EDI and then onto whatever entity they need to do. So say, for instance, it might be not social security or
Medicare.
Medicare, thank you. Onto, like, say, Medicare, or it might be to another insurance company or whatever the case may be. Okay. Money is made from the transactions, but money is also made through these customers, which are the third-party software companies that then, make money from the various practitioners that are their clients. Okay. So what has happened basically is, we're told the official story is that a hacker group has infiltrated and attacked Change Healthcare. We don't need to go into the names. You can read about that. I've got a Wired magazine article up. We can look at that in a second, but and they go into all that. Mm-hmm. That they basically attacked Change Healthcare with a ransomware attack, and that they basically locked up all of Change Healthcare's ability. Well, data. No.
Their ability to log into the
right. Their servers, and so basically, because it's locked up everything, it basically stopped those APIs from talking to the third-party software company. So basically, all the software that the various practitioners and clinics and hospitals use to make insurance claims and pharmacy claims, okay, are not working because there's no communication going on. So this attack allegedly locked that up. Now, I think they were asking something like, $22 million or 1 million. I mean, I'm sure it's more than $1 million. It's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money for United Health Group. Okay. So the
Can I just
yeah, go ahead.
interject?
All right. So that's basically it in a nutshell. Okay.
So do we believe that terrorists have hacked into Change Healthcare's clearinghouse system and held 6 trillion databytes? No, what is it? It's 6 terabytes.
6 terabytes of data.
Patient data, which is basically every patient in the United States of
Right.
America. Held it all for ransom, threatening to put it on the dark web, threatening to put all of our social security numbers on the dark web, putting us at risk for fraud,
Right.
for fraudulent practices against us, like people opening up bank accounts under our name or opening up credit cards or trying to hack into our checking accounts, holding it for ransom. Do you believe that that's true, JP?
Well, now I don't.
I mean, do you believe that that's the true story? I mean, honestly,
and at first I did, because I was hearing it from different sources.
Because you're on the inside.
And and I work. Okay, I'm going to reveal that I actually work for Optum, who owns Change Healthcare. Okay. So I've been getting a lot of the inside information. It's weird how Julie and I keep ending up in these weird places.
Actually,
right?
You're a contractor.
I am a contractor.
So
yes,
you don't work for them directly.
I don't, no.
But they're using some of your skill sets for their benefit.
Right, for their benefit.
So ultimately, we don't believe the official narrative.
Right. Now, what they're saying is this is the article that is used to distract people. This came out about a week ago. This is from Wired magazine, and they're saying that $22 million, but they're also saying that this group called AlphaV received 350 bitcoins in a single transaction, and they're pointing to the fact that this is evidence that they got paid. Now, the other thing that's going on is that we heard a podcast with some guys who are internet. Wow, what's going on?
I'm just making sure.
Okay, no.
Also, let us know if our audio is okay. We have some thunder going on in the background.
Yeah.
So let us know if we're okay.
Right.
If we're loud and clear. There's lots of thunder going on. It's like really loud, but you might not be able to hear it on the microphone.
It chose to go right as we went live. So
of course.
Anyway, so the
talking to the microphone too, a little bit better.
You talking to the microphone.
Well, I want people to hear you because you have a lot of good
So I'm trying to maintain a train of thought here, but I forgot what I was saying. Basically, we heard a podcast of some guys who are about internet security. Okay. And they were saying that the negotiations between AlphaV and Change Healthcare are still going on, and they're not going well.
So AlphaV or Black Cat is the alleged terrorist group,
right?
Okay. That's holding everything ransom.
Now, on the surface, it sounds like a good story. It sounds like guys from Arabia got onto a plane with box cutters and took over the. Oh, wait a minute.
What?
No,
what?
that some nebulous group out there in the
dark
internet,
entity
in the interwebs infiltrated a multi-million-dollar company to stop it in its tracks and prevent it from doing the work that it does.
Excuse me while I grip my desk. This thunder is insane, guys.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
All right. So what I'm going to do. That's whatever. It was a dark and stormy night.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's really scary.
Okay, I'm going to share something again. This is a very interesting Twitter thread that I think is really pretty interesting. And I said interesting.
So much
yeah
packed into it. It's just like, oh my god.
So this will only take a couple minutes, but Julie turned me onto this, and it really does a good job of kind of explaining the story, okay, the narrative that we're dealing with, but also the implications of all this. So this guy's name is Zach Kantor. Let me just say that he is a CEO of a company that would be a competitor to Change Healthcare.
So
okay,
something tells me Zach is benefiting from this.
Oh, he is.
You know.
Oh, yes. But anyway, he also does a good job of explaining it. So he says, Change Healthcare, the nation's largest clearinghouse for insurance claims and payments, has been down for 13 days and counting due to a cyber attack. Now, this was posted on the 5th, so today's the 8th. So it's like, 16 days. So it's over 2 weeks at this point. It's an absolute crisis. Doctors, hospitals, and other providers can't get paid. Damn. What is a clearinghouse? What is going on? Thread. Okay, so the cat is okay. She's sleeping.
Okay.
Everyone knows HIPAA as a privacy act, forms to fill out at a doctor's office. What people don't know is the portability part of the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, which directed the Department of HHS to establish standards for electronic transactions. Before HIPAA, insurance companies, aka payers, and providers all use different formats for insurance claims, payments, eligibility checks, benefits enrollments, and more. It was functionally impossible for all of the parties to do business together without manual intervention. After HIPAA, HHS mandated all payers have the ability to exchange transactions electronically using a single format, X12 EDI. So that's the EDI I was telling you about. Doctors/hospitals use software to run their practices and operations. Those software companies now had a standardized way to integrate with payers, in other words, EDI. When you walk into a doctor's office, they scan your insurance card, then tell you what your copay is. That's an EDI, an eligibility check happening behind the scenes. Your doctor, hospital doesn't know they're doing EDI. Their practice management software does it for them. So the practice management software is those third-party software companies that I was telling you about. It turns out that most software companies don't know they're doing EDI either. Clearinghouses like Change Healthcare push their own bespoke API formats because EDI is hard and because customers have a harder time switching. Now, what he means by bespoke is, like I said a moment ago, this is customized software that meets the needs, like the tailored needs. This is a word that comes from the like clothing industry, right? Where
hospitality,
it's like,
actually.
Well, hospitality uses it, but it comes from tailoring.
Okay,
making something that's
specifically to your body type.
Exactly,
and size.
right,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So he's using it here, like these are tailored experiences or tailored software for the third-party software companies. They communicate via the bespoke API. And then he goes on. HIPAA required that clearinghouses are able to exchange data via EDI, but it doesn't prevent them from offering alternative formats. So software companies make API calls to changes bespoke format. Change turns it into EDI and submits it to the payer. Okay. So they're doing what they're required to do, and they're communicating via EDI, but their own customers communicate via the APIs, which have been locked up. The software companies started looking to move to other clearinghouses. There are plenty of them, and they found out that it was a huge effort to move from Change API's format, which isn't standardized, unlike EDI, to another clearinghouse's format. It can take months. And, as somebody who sits in on software development and meetings and designs for things like this, I can tell you it takes months. So what's happening now is that software companies are desperately trying to rewrite their code to work with a different clearinghouse overnight. Doctors and hospitals are dead in the water while they wait for this to happen. Meanwhile, they aren't getting paid. The whole purpose of the HIPAA Act was portability, which was what EDI delivered. Insurance companies only speak EDI to clearinghouses, so they don't have a clue that clearinghouses have invented their own bespoke non-EDI formats, introducing systemic risk back into the system. Now, this sounds something like that took place in 2008. And I can't remember what it was, but anyway. we at Steady, so Zach Kantor's company, an EDI company, and I'm going to stop at this point, but basically we have worked 24/7 to launch drop-in replacements for Change's APIs, no code changes required, that speak the HIPAA mandated EDI format on the back end, while we're using our own, APIs that match Change's APIs to help these companies get, running. So anyway, he goes on to do his little dog and pony show to tell you about what's going on with his company and how
his brand and
his
why
brand.
Why all the providers should go to him,
right?
So
instead, so yeah.
Okay. So I did a very short tree walk in front of our house 2 days ago. Was it yesterday or the day before?
It might have been yesterday. It feels so long ago now.
I know. I took 12 minutes to talk about what's happening in the world. And so everything that JP just read from Zach Kantor's Twitter feed is really relevant. But to synthesize it and to explain it in language that people who don't understand software as a system or software as a way to
software as a service
is, to work with HIPAA and EDI and all this stuff. You've got your provider and you've got your insurance company. And then in between them is a liaison, is the in-between guy. The in-between guy is the one that was compromised. And as we mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast, the official narrative is that it was terrorist attack on everyone's data, and they're holding all the patient's data for ransom until they get paid. And not only that, they're locking out all the providers from being able to access the software that they need in order to put in things like patient information and update on patient care so that they can bill the insurance companies correctly, right? Mm-hmm. So this is hundreds of thousands of healthcare providers, labs, that run that do blood work. Pharmacies especially have been affected by this. And a lot of specialized medical clinics are affected by this, especially the ones. Now I want you to pay really close attention to what I'm going to say here, especially the ones that have a smaller patient base. So the smaller clinics, the smaller labs, mm-hmm. the smaller medical facilities that offer basic care or specialized care. Does this sound familiar? When a thing happened, maybe about 4 years ago, about this time, where smaller businesses were cudgeled out of existence and forced to close because they lost their income. Why did they lose their income? Because they were told that they needed to shut down and no longer operate their businesses to full capacity. Well, this is what's happening to the smaller clinics because of this ransomware attack, because terrorists came and told them that if you don't give us millions of dollars, we're going to release everybody's information on the web and we're going to block you out of your own system. So this should have, we are savvy enough now in the age of the internet where we have learned so much over the last 20 years. We should know by now what it looks like when the state, when your own government is playing with you, mm-hmm. is playing cat and mouse with you. Mm-hmm. So in my opinion, we're going to see a repeat of what took place in 2020 in the medical field. So a lot of the smaller clinics, their funding may dry up. They may be forced to close. You may start hearing little stories that small little urgent care facilities are shutting down. And usually who are the type of people that utilize urgent care the most? the elderly, because they're on a limited income and they have limited insurance, and so they go there for care. They go to urgent care. So,
or people who don't want to go see doctors,
or people who just don't want to go see doctors. And in the same way that your small like dry goods store was forced to close during the 2020 event, and Costco was allowed to stay open, you're going to see, huge mega government funded facilities like Stanford Medical Center or Johns Hopkins. They'll stay open, but your smaller clinics may have to close.
Mm-hmm.
So this feels very similar to that. And they're using the same kind of techniques, the same kind of behavior that they used during the COVID operation, that they used during the 9/11 operation.
There's similarities to the 2008 financial meltdown.
To the 2008 financial meltdown.
And there was another event that this reminds me of quite a bit, and I brought it up to Julie.
Yeah, you keep bringing this up. It's really interesting that you make this correlation.
Yeah, and it's not clear. It's not a clear correlation, but it feels similar, and that's because of the negotiations that are going on with the terrorists who are holding something hostage. Right?
Shirt keeps falling. Sorry. All crooked. I feel like I'm half dressed. Sorry, guys.
You are? No.
Anyway, I don't know. I don't know how to fix it.
She's just wearing a shirt. No.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
The newsman.
I feel like Flashdance,
I know, right?
Like
yeah, you are Flashdance.
From the 1980s. Remember that movie? Okay.
What a feel. Anyway, so let's all rip out our collars again.
So it reminds
It reminds me of something that took place in 1972 during the Munich Olympics. Do you guys remember that? If you're old enough, it was a hostage situation where Israeli athletes were taken hostage by a Palestinian organization, not the PLO. It was what they called Black September.
Yeah, they were called Black September.
I thought,
I was 2. I remember it well.
I was 9 or something or more.
Actually, I was 1.
Yeah, you were 1. I remember it. I remember it because watching it on TV, and it just was like this ongoing thing, and it was a very now. Like we said, this is the story that nobody's hearing about, right? Nobody's reporting on it, but it's being played the same way. Where, if you look in the tech press, you'll see, like that Wired magazine article that I showed you, which was just a hunk of garbage. There's also an article around the same time talking about hackers and,
stupid.
Anyway,
whatever,
yeah. Anyway, it's the same kind of narrative. So if this thing were being played out on CNN, every cycle that they go through the headlines, it would definitely be played like that. And I think that that's in their back pocket. I think.
Yeah, I think right now. Okay, so there's so many different variables going on with this story. To simplify it, I would say that right now what we're in is the acknowledgement phase. Okay, and let's get the story straight. It was men with box cutters. Okay, no. It was hackers. It was attackers holding patient data for ransom and then locking doctors out of their own software programs. Let's all, mainstream media is like, let's all get on board and make sure that we have the same story, and let's just pound it over and over again and make people believe that. So right now they're in that phase, which was a similar way that they orchestrated, the 9/11 story, as well as the COVID story, as well as any, the 2008 financial collapse story, and
They're kind of like setting up the narrative, right? And they're putting it into place, and they're using certain language, and they're going about it in a certain way.
Right.
So,
but you're not hearing about it because it's kind of complicated, because it has to do, and even Bitcoin is somehow involved in this.
Right.
They even threw in Bitcoin to make it a little bit more chaotic and complicated.
Now,
which I thought was really interesting.
What we're hearing on the inside, there was a meeting for employees that was, basically a streaming meeting with some CEOs and some vice presidents and shit. They were talking about it, and the one senior or executive vice president or whatever. I mentioned him. You tweeted about him. He was doing the corporate equivalent of yelling. I mean, he raised his voice, and he said, "This is an attack on the American medical system, the American medical system,
The American health system?
the American healthcare system." Yeah,
Right,
I wrote it down here. Yeah, attack on the American healthcare system. And you know, you can imagine him like slamming his shoe on the desk while saying this, but he you know, he was on camera and he wasn't doing this. But he was in his office, and so the aesthetics there was he's on the job, he's in his office. He's not in the, so the two executives that were holding the meeting were on stage, on a staged
and they're like
platform, and they were very relaxed.
Of
course, because it didn't affect them.
They're like,
I don't have to put in extra hours. I just have to do this fucking live stream.
Right.
Okay. But they had a couple chairs and they had glasses of water, and they're looking very relaxed, and they're telling us to all relax and everything's okay, folks. Well, the guy that's on the job is in his office, and he's in there with another guy who's on the job too, and they're yelling about this. Now, the same guy also used the word infection. He's like, we're tracking down this infection, and we're making sure that it's so.
Pay attention to words. It's
right.
really interesting when you use that term.
Now,
right?
What we're being told in the tech press, like Wired and stuff, is that this was ransomware. And this podcast that we heard the other day that we'd have to find, and I'm not going to play it because it's too much. I just tweeted
at the guy.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, you did. But basically, they were saying that it was, this the other thing. Okay, before I go into that, the other thing that was going on was some shaming, very subtle shaming going on, saying that this was some sort of phishing attack. So phishing is like this sort of scheme. You'll get an email that says, I'm from your financial organization, and that there's been a problem on your account, and you need to click this link in order to find out.
Never click the link.
Yeah, don't ever click the link. And they'll even call you, or they'll text you. So phishing scams can be, in all these formats. Anyway, they were blaming it on a phishing scam that somebody responded to, and that's how the attack was able to take place. So they're blaming people in the organization. Somebody out there, didn't do what they were supposed to do.
So can I correlate that?
Sure.
Okay. So in the same way that when 9/11 happened, everybody was like really cautious around everybody else. There was this, underlying narrative that somebody was to blame, that there could be terrorists among us. They could be walking among us. So if you see something, say something, always be, and so they were incorporating this idea that we couldn't trust anyone, and that we couldn't even trust ourselves, at this point.
Yeah.
Same thing with COVID, oh my goodness,
You're
don't
gonna
know.
make me sick, and
someone might make you sick. Someone might be an unknown carrier of a virus. That's the same exact narrative that was coming from this corporate person.
Mm-hmm.
They were basically saying, you remote employees, you bad remote employees with your computers at your bad homes instead of an office where we can constantly look at you. You probably downloaded a phishing scam or some kind of ransomware or malware on your computer. And now you've infected the whole system, and it's all being held for ransom. So all of these poor Change Health employees, these remote employees who are already, check out when they did this. This is what's really devious about this whole situation. Of course, I'm looking at this from a psychological level or from a pathological level, more like. It's not psychological at this point. We're talking pathos. We're talking pathological. You guys don't know the background. Change Healthcare had just been purchased by Optum. So all of these new employees were meeting new people, meeting new coworkers, finding out who their new managers were. They were feeling really vulnerable to begin with. Okay. Mm-hmm. They were already at that weird place where there was this strange, absorption of another company.
Well, they were literally, they were just being integrated in, and not everybody has been integrated yet into the Optum system. This this purchase took place, or this transition took place about a year ago.
Right.
They still had their own Change Healthcare computers.
Right.
Right. They didn't have Optum computers. They had Change Healthcare computers, and they were still being integrated into like the system so that they could, we could see each other on Teams and
right.
And
so they were still learning
share
names and
share files,
right,
and all these kinds of things.
Being introduced to projects and people, and they were just getting their feet wet.
There's another layer, Julie.
Well,
it's this is bonus season.
Oh no. Okay.
Right. This is
not for JP, by the way. He doesn't get bonuses
because
he's a lowly contractor.
I don't get
so
that
he doesn't
shit.
get
I don't get
anything.
vacation.
He doesn't
pay.
get vacation pay. He doesn't get bonuses. He doesn't get benefits.
But I get the skinny on.
That's why we do this platform, so that you guys can help us out a bit. But
so. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
But so, coming from a pathological perspective or a psychological perspective, these poor people, these poor remote workers were already feeling vulnerable and unsteady and unsure of this new environment. And then the next thing you know, their laptops that were given to them by the company then confiscated their laptops and say, we need your laptops. We need to make sure that you're not carrying a virus, you dirty person.
Not only that, but for a week.
It's horrible.
For a week their laptops were basically a paperweight.
Right.
They were told not to
don't even open them.
Yeah, because it turns them on, and it was like, don't put them into the system. Don't get on the system.
Right.
With your laptop.
So this is the same
because it
thing.
could have that malware and like the cart, the horse is already out of the barn. Don't close the door now.
This is exactly what they told us to do in 2020. Don't even open your door. Right. Don't leave your home. Don't open your door. Don't open your windows. Don't go anywhere.
Don't go outside.
So these poor Change Health employees, it was the same thing. Don't open your laptop. Don't do anything. Just sit there.
Well, they had to attend meetings on phones.
Yeah.
On their
so
on their phones.
On their personal phones.
Right.
So it just it already just it was and you have to understand how this was coming about, like in our environment here, where we live. Every like 30 to 45 minutes or so, JP would come out, would emerge from his office and give me the scoop. And he believed the official narrative. Sure. And he was telling me this. And of course, me being who I am, I was like, okay, eventually he's going to wake up. Eventually, my husband is going to wake up to the fact that this is the corporate state waging some kind of financial fuckery on the Change Healthcare employees and others as well, and patients and providers at large. Like, we're looking at a bigger thing here, like a huge financial taking. Another great taking. We're looking at that. That's happening now.
Like that video, he's like, well, we're still collecting premiums, aren't we?
Exactly. So the video we showed at the very beginning of this broadcast.
You have to go back to it
if you haven't seen it.
And the link is in the show notes. So if you want to go watch it, it's there.
And eventually, it took about 24 hours, but eventually JP figured it out. He's like, oh, wait, what have we learned all this time?
Right. Well, you started seeing the patterns. This is what we're trying to do, is like kind of walk through the patterns.
We're showing the patterns. So at first they announced that terrorists had, had somehow overtaken a system that was full of every single patient in the United States, full of their information. Terrorists were holding it at ransom while they were blocking the providers out of their own systems. Mm-hmm. So the providers couldn't even see what was going on. They couldn't log into their system. Okay. And so all of the employees of the company that was allegedly hacked were then told, you could be the potential bad guy. You don't know this. You're not allowed to open up your computer. They confiscated their computers. They treated thousands of employees like they were potential terrorists.
Right. And, and then in that meeting that I was telling you about, that live stream meeting, they basically reiterated that whole idea that, you may be at fault for this because you answered a phishing email, and they went into it like a couple times.
Yeah,
so they
really wanted to drive home that. Yeah. My opinion is that the gentleman who made that statement, this is an attack on our healthcare system, on our American healthcare system, and almost, broke into song about it. Some sort of patriotic flag waving bullshit. We will not let our terrorists, take over. Right? Remember all that from 9/11?
We don't negotiate.
We don't negotiate with terrorists. It's your fault. All this stuff. I think he was hoping, to be honest, JP, I would think he was hoping that some employee, or maybe they did already, would capture that and that it would trend on social media but I don't think anyone ever did.
No,
because all of the people that work in these types of environments are just like, really? Nobody's going to hit record on their screen and record this guy making this statement.
Well, not only that, it's hard
and then let it go viral.
It's hard to get it out too, because
right.
You can't. My laptop doesn't allow me to put a thumb drive in.
Right.
It doesn't allow me to connect to an external hard drive of any kind. I can't connect to other outside sources. The only way that I can share files with myself is to send an email with something.
So so phase one,
and videos are big, so you can't do that. So,
right.
Yeah.
So we're in the phase one, the phase one and phase 1A of the story. Phase 1A and 1B of the story, which is that here's a thing that happened. It's a terrible thing. We do not negotiate with terrorists. Oh, and by the way, you could be a terrorist. Right. So we're sort of in that phase right now, where the powers that be are making these statements to create fear and anxiety and question. They want the people, especially the employees, to question themselves. They don't want the employees to trust themselves. And then they went into phase 2. Mm-hmm. And remember what phase 2 is.
Well, we've got here, you've got going into other things, but before you do that, I want to talk about how they're bringing in, and this kind of fits in with a later phase, but it's happening now because these things kind of don't always fit together the same way each time. But just like in 2008, the banks, got bailed out. Now, people were making statements like, the doctors were like, "Oh, we need to get paid, and we need, and
that's phase 2. This is phase 2.
Yeah, and so, okay, yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm. United Health Group was actually putting out, or Optum was putting out money, it was like $23 million or something already to help, some of these doctors, pay their bills, et cetera. But let's bring up the HHS. Let me share that. You want to introduce this?
Well, okay. So in the same way that, when 9/11 happened and when the COVID operation was launched, your heads of your various departments may have to make official statements. So, imagine, if you will, September 11th happens. By September 12th, the Department of Defense and and Homeland Security have to make an official statement public, so that the press can pick through that statement and cover it and basically say, we are aware that this attack took place. So whether it was 9/11, we are aware, the Department of Defense says, we will create strong borders. We're aware this, this attack took place, or whether it's the Department of Homeland Security, blah, blah, blah. Same thing with COVID, with the COVID situation. We saw immediately that Alex Azar, who's the Secretary of Health for the Health and Human Services, came out and made a statement with the Department of Defense. So this is the equivalent of that. There's always a major statement from a major department in the government that will make a statement when something really, really serious happens, like 9/11 or COVID. So this is the equivalent of that. So in this case, because it has to do with health, HHS makes a statement regarding the cyber attack on Change Healthcare. Mm-hmm. All right. And, you guys can read through it, whatever. Right. But I just want to say that we're at that phase now. Right. So that's phase 1B.
Right.
Okay.
So,
and phase 2 then comes into the same narrative or the same language that businesses had with COVID, which is, all right, government, this bad thing happened. It's not our fault. You need to bail us out. And so it happened with COVID, and it happened with the 2008, situation, and it happened in 9/11 as well, where things were forced to shut down because of an emergency situation. In this case, it was a terrorist attack on Change Healthcare. So of course, Optum, who owns Change Healthcare, and United Health Group, who is
everything,
who owns everything in the whole world practically, is demanding that the government step in and fund the system so the system doesn't collapse.
Right.
So that's phase 2.
Right. And I was calling this the idea phase, but I think it's like conceptual, or I don't know what you would call it exactly, but it's about getting.
And they're doing that. They've made it very public.
Right.
They've made public statements on their websites. They've made public statements on Twitter. They've had, clinicians. They've interviewed clinicians and people in medical facilities and pharmacists. And they all have all of these assets. All of these assigned individuals have the same exact talking point. This bad thing happened. Terrorist attack. We can't serve our patients, so government needs to fund us.
So it's the equivalent of safe. You remember being safe? Being safe in 9/11, being safe during COVID. It's the same kind of idea, right? So now they've locked down those computers. They're making us start to think that maybe we're at fault for
that's phase 1.
Yeah, right. Okay. But then this ties into sort of like the idea that 1 in 3, possible even 1 in 2 patients' data could be compromised, and so there's this fear factor, right? And
that's actually everybody's data is already compromised.
So they have to implement stronger security measures. Does that sound familiar? Wow. I wonder what. Okay, so 1972, we started seeing more and more metal detectors, and then let's see, 9/11, we
created a whole agency.
Oh my God, that's right. And it's funny how that TSA, that agency, it still looks like they're just kind of camping out in front of the airport, doesn't it?
Well, it looks a little bit more permanent than that now.
Yeah, well, not much. I mean, it still looks like makeshift. Like it'll go away someday, but it never will, of course. And then the whole thing with 2008, with the financial crisis, it's like, those people taking too many loans, and now we've got to crack down on that, right? So you got to be safe in your borrowing practices too. Okay. And so we're going to have to do these things that you couldn't do before, or that you did before, but you can't do now because, debt.
Right.
Even though they're loading you up with debt every moment.
And then COVID, what was the one thing that you can continue to do to be safe?
Oh, well, you could mask yourself.
Exactly. So there's always
wash your hands.
So that's actually phase 3. So phase 2 is we need the funding. Give us money. Give us money. Give us money. We were the victims of a terrorist attack. We can't serve our employees. We can't serve our customer base, which are patients. We can't pay we can't find the funding to pay for the operations to continue. We have bills to pay. So government, you need to fund us. And the government says, okay, well, here is what it's going to cost you. You need to sign up with these various services to really make sure to ensure your safety. And so you have a whole new industry that's created out of the need to be safe. And it's probably going to be something like, some kind of biometrics, like maybe every time JP logs into his computer, at a certain time. I don't know when this is going to start. We were speculating that it could start, in April, in Q3 or maybe Q4.
Probably October I think at the earliest October.
You think it's going to possibly start in October. So that would be Q4, right? Yeah. So the fourth financial quarter. So, you guys know about that. I've talked about it before. A lot of these things are based on the financial quarter. It's not random. Like, this all happens for a reason. And that's another thing I really want to drive home with you is they're slowly, fielding this story out there, seeing how many hits it gets. The New York Times has covered it, NPR has covered it. So it's out there. Okay. They're doing it now at the end of Q1. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to roll out something really radical like, some sort of biometrics login security protocol or whatever by Q2. I think that's too soon. I think the rollout for any type of financial aid to these clinics or to these organizations who've lost money would happen in the next quarter, which is April 1st.
I think also, and I think, it may not be as severe as that. I mean, it might be for us, as
in the
employees,
industry,
right?
Right.
But I think what's going to happen also with like these small practices and clinics and et cetera, is they are going to have to comply. There's another word that we heard, comply with certain rules and regulations that have come about because of this attack. Right. They're
exactly.
going to, and it's classic,
and
right?
So
they set up the problem and then they create the solution to
don't say Hegelian
I won't. No, I
violence.
won't, because I don't believe,
well,
that's
I
not
mean,
it. But,
our
please,
followers, please don't say that.
Because,
that's not what it is.
Yeah. So it's not the Hegelian
it's not that.
But there is a situation where it's like they've created the scenario, the situation, and they have a solution for it, and you're going to have to follow that, and that those would be new protocols or new whatever it is,
right? And so it's
or it's more money,
it's a mob relationship,
right?
So clinics and insurers, if you want us to fund you, then you need to set up these really expensive, really time-consuming security protocols. You workers who could potentially have caused this problem, because it's always the innocent workers that are to blame, right?
Right.
People like JP or whatever. You too are going to have to go through like another level of security to make sure that this computer that we gave you to work on isn't that you aren't somehow accidentally infecting it with this infection. That's a term that they used. And they did that on purpose. So all of this may roll out by Q3. I don't know how fast it's going to be, but this is how you get rid of the small clinics. This is how you get rid of that specialized
right, because if
care.
they can't comply
because they can't afford it, or they just don't have the staff to take on this new level of security,
or if they've lost so much money in this round,
because what you would have to do is you'd have to hire more IT people, and their IT people, tech people, they're not cheap.
Right.
So a lot of these businesses will just be like, forget it.
Or the third party systems are going to either go away or have to change their business model and then charge more so that it's
exactly.
Right.
So so I think that what we're looking at is something that is going on behind the scenes that we're seeing from a completely different perspective, our eyes are a little bit clearer on this situation than maybe, yours are, because we kind of like heard it firsthand, or he did. And then he told me. I don't work in the industry, but sometimes I feel like I do, with all of the things that I've decided to teach myself about, software as a service and designing for users and all this stuff, just stuff that I've just kind of researched on my own, when I don't have anything else to do.
And I think, eventually, and so what we've been talking about, I think also, you had it written down here, and I titled it the gaslighting phase. I mean, so what we've been talking about is like a total amount,
the whole thing is a
gaslighting, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're gaslighting the public, they're gaslighting the employees, they're gaslighting the doctors and practitioners. So it's all this sort of gaslighting thing, but it's also tied into the idea, well, you want to be safe, right? We need to have safety. We need to have safety in our systems, and the attack on the American healthcare system, that's not right. And so we've got to make it right by imposing these things on you that make us all safe. There's that word again. I mean, that is a consistent word, I think, that we've been hearing and seeing since since
Forever.
at least 9/11 or
My whole life.
Yeah, I know,
basically.
right?
My whole life.
Well, I mean,
You
I
know?
think that was also, I don't remember it for sure, but I'm sure it was incorporated into the narrative around the 72 Olympics situation that I was talking about. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, so now we all have to be,
It's Friday night. I'm fidgety.
Are you? Yeah, it's fidgety. Yeah.
So, and I already did an hour and a half podcast earlier today. So I'm like, ugh.
Well, did you ever find that, you mentioned something in your podcast this morning.
Oh, you want me to find it on Mr. Webb's?
Yeah. Yeah.
What else did I mention there that I thought was really important that we drive home?
Well, I think what I was getting at by showing the HHS statement was this idea of like basically the bailout, which is what we've been talking about, right? So if you want to, be able to make, get refunded for what you lost, and get bailed out like the banks did in 2008, like businesses did in COVID, and not in COVID, in 9/11. But in other situations, you'll have to comply. I mean, I think, even in like disaster capitalism and the so-called disasters, like the one that happened here almost 20 years ago, Katrina, people had to get loans from FEMA or via the SBA. I have friends that in the Loma Prieta earthquake, their house, they were living practically on the on ground, on the
dirt,
the place where the earthquake happened, like I forget what they call that, the point where it happened, and their house was practically there, and their house fell off or came off of its foundation, and it wasn't a small house; it was a big place, and they had to get a loan in order to fund or finance the replacement of the house back onto its foundation. And so they had to take a loan out, and they got it through the SBA, which is the Small Business Administration, which is weird to me that the government funds these things through these other agencies. I don't know why it was the SBA. It's hard to get a loan from the SBA when you're a business. Why they would do it in that, but anyway, so, money goes through these different, funding channels for a reason. And, the same thing happened here in the Gulf Coast, in New Orleans, and the landmass between Florida and New Orleans that was ground zero, that was utterly destroyed in a lot of cases. We see a lot of open spaces here still to this day. But
it's really resilient.
It's very resilient, and the last of that funding, I think, is being implemented, and
that's resilient in a good way, not in a cynical way, like the little cartoon we made years ago called Resilient Cities.
Right, Resilient Cities. Yeah, it's not that.
It's not Pittsburgh resilient. It's really resilient because people in the South are like, they're kind of like superheroes. Okay, so I'm trying to find the passage about clearinghouses.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to read what a clearinghouse is?
Yeah, why don't you
look
read
for that?
it?
Okay. So
didn't you read it already when you first started?
I didn't. No, I didn't. So let me clearinghouses, and I can share this with you guys. This is on. Where's our? I'm getting a spinner. Okay, there we go. Oh no.
Are you still with us?
I'm still. Yeah, everybody's with us, I think. Okay, so let me go over here to. Wikipedia, the good old Wikipedia, not compromised at all. So a clearinghouse is a financial institution formed to facilitate the exchange, i.e. clearance, of payments, securities, or derivatives transactions. The clearinghouse stands between two clearing firms known as member firms or as participants. Its purpose is to reduce the risk of a member firm failing to honor its trade settlement obligations. Okay, that's gobbledygook. That doesn't really clear up anything, but basically...
Well, you should read what I wrote.
Well, let me read what you wrote, because that's a much better...
Especially the last two sentences.
Okay.
Basically,
Let me find it. Oh yeah, it's right here. So what is a clearinghouse?
Read the last.
The last two sentences
Yeah,
here?
because it's basically the same thing you just read, but I added.
Okay. Its purpose is to reduce the risk of a member firm failing to honor its trade settlement obligations. It ensures payments are made and transactions are complete. It's a liaison or third party that takes a fee out of each transaction. Okay. So were you able to find that?
Not really.
Okay.
So there's something under what he calls collateral management, where he talks about changes that may raise demand for collateral have not been phased in yet, since jurisdictions operate on different timelines.
Well,
There are
there's
mandatory central clearing and margin requirements for non-centrally cleared trades.
yeah. Okay.
So maybe
Well,
it's not really.
Go back to her. Go back to Julie's audio podcast from her reading this morning, where she actually says, and so this is like the change.
The change health situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you go back to that, listen to it. It's towards the end of the show. So if you need to just scan through it, that's fine. It's kind of towards the end. But if you haven't heard it already, go back and listen to it all the way through.
It's where, they talk about givers and takers. Yeah.
Okay.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And really, even if you don't go back and listen to it, it doesn't matter, because I think it's a lot simpler. I think it's a lot more simple than even what David Webb might say. This is a situation, I think, where if we're talking about a financial debt situation, okay, so let's try to synthesize this a little bit more. We have providers that are locked out of a software program that they need to get into every day, dozens of times a day, in order to get paid. So people are now not getting paid. So the money that would normally go to the providers to pay them, where is it? Well, the story is that the attackers want it. That's not what happened. Something else is going on. And this has to do with the financial reset that we're in. This has to do with the great taking that David Webb does talk about in this book that was gifted to us by a patron. Okay. So where do you think the money is? Where is the money to pay? The money isn't there to pay the provider. So there's
no real transactions taking place at all. And so, even though that snarky video was claiming that, that United Health Group is doing nothing, I think that, like with COVID, they're probably getting some sort of funding in order to put this operation through, in order to make this thing happen. Because I think what the ultimate goal is to, like you were saying, squeeze out the small practitioners and the small businesses, as it were.
And only keep the larger, huge,
Right, because it benefits an organization like United Health Group, because they're like one of the largest out there, right? But it also benefits like all the insurance companies and vertical healthcare organizations like Kaiser, right, where they provide the insurance and the medical care.
Right.
It benefits the big players because it allows them to keep the insurance money and the provider money and everything closer together. Let me give you an example. Let me just say outright, Optum actually has personnel in hospitals. They are an organization that provides services, including
I just hiccuped. Sorry.
including doctors and nurses and support staff. Okay, they're Optum employees. They're like me. I'm a contractor at Optum, but I work for another company, right? So they have Optum employees that are working in hospitals that, they don't directly report to the hospital, or they don't get paid by the hospital. They get paid by Optum. Okay, they might have a supervisor at the hospital, but they're an Optum employee. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is this is basically the same corporate capitalist play that keeps getting that you keep seeing over and over, where you get fewer and fewer and fewer players. Julie and I were talking a couple of weeks ago about how the thing that Clinton signed, basically the act about Telecommunications Act, how it took out a bunch of small radio stations and TV stations and allowed the corporate large entities to kind of take over. And now we're down to like 3 news agencies or whatever, 3 news sources in the country, as opposed to like, the many, right? And so local radio stations and non-corporate, like independent radio stations are now, NPR affiliates or whatever. And there's very few that are like actually independent. And that,
so this is just another version of that.
This is another version of that. It's
they're
like
going to create a new act, and it's going to be based on protecting patients or protecting providers.
So if you want to look at this, like, it's again, yet another false flag attack that allows them to then create laws or policy or what have you to force people into systems that they may not have been inclined to be part of in the first place, or it forces small businesses out of business and people have to go to the larger corporations. I mean, if you think of like the Maine, going back to the turn of the 19th into the 20th century, where the Maine was allegedly, blown up by Spanish marauders in Cuba, which caused us to have to go to the Spanish, start the Spanish-American War. Who benefited from that? Well, Hearst did.
William Randolph.
And well, anyway, so it's basically the same kind of playbook, where it's like it's this event that takes place that allows them to then take action in whatever way they see fit.
So how does that affect our friends who, we have a friend who works for, in one of these big giant, hospital systems on the East Coast. She's not a nurse or a doctor or anything like that. She's more, on the administrative end of things.
Well, I think that it's like me. She's going to be affected by, security protocols.
More security protocols. What about people who are actually in the industry, who might, work for a clinic and do a service for patients?
Well, okay, so let's put it this. So let me go back to Optum again. Remember,
how are they going to be affected?
Remember I told you how Optum has, personnel in hospitals, and then they also do other type. They offer software as a service. They have an EDI product. Okay, and so they offer these various things, and part of what they do is, Optum is one of those companies that make sure that they keep an eye on employees. So hospital personnel, they monitor every keystroke. If you walk away and you haven't like logged out, or you haven't done something, just to go to the bathroom, I think that they're going to really crack down even harder. There may be even video surveillance now that comes about. There's going to be surveillance of, what they're looking at on the screen, how many keystrokes per minute they type. They get dinged if they aren't like constantly working. So, and this is now, like, the keystrokes.
This is already happening.
So the monitoring of employees. And I have to tell you, I mean, I was working on a product that was basically it was monitoring a protocol or a program that's in place that allows hospitals and a third party, what would you call it? They certification organization that puts a protocol in place for reviewing doctors' performance. And not only that, but why they ordered certain drugs, why they reserved certain, like say a surgical room, and how to basically maximize the value out of like spaces and resources. Okay. So resources could be operating rooms, resources could be drugs and pharmaceuticals, resources could be the time that a doctor spends with a patient. So what this is going to do is make it even more robotic. The doctors are not going to be reliant on their own personal knowledge. They're going to be reliant on what they're being told to tell a patient, which we see now, but I feel that's going to be amped up even further.
Right.
And it may even like introduce the whole idea of, they're setting this thing up. I mean, we're talking like down the road, but
Or
like basically where you'd talking to something that's AI oriented.
Right.
And even if it is a live person, they're going to be relying on AI information coming to them that's then repeated.
I wonder if
this is all to save money and time so that they can make more money, right? And they're going to be pushing people into more and smaller and smaller crevices in order to maximize the money that they can make from them. And
no, it's okay. I'm just thinking, my wheels are spinning. So I'm wondering if this situation, which is what it is I'm always looking like big picture, like what's the real end goal here? We know that I think the real end goal, and you mentioned it, like I think it's really just AI. So by implementing these new safety protocols for people that use computers for these clearinghouse systems like Change Health, and going through the different channels that you have to go through in order to make the thing go, you're going to be teaching the AI so that it's much more streamlined, so that you're going to be like, if you don't do it a certain way, you're going to be locked out. And you already deal with some things like that where you're just like, I'm doing a thing and now I can't do a thing. And it's because I need some kind of security clearance.
Right. Yeah.
And, you don't really think about it. But now that I think about it, it's like, what if all of this is basically just to teach the AI to do it so that it's much more streamlined in the future? I don't know.
I think
I'm thinking long term.
And I am too. And I think that, you're maybe onto something. I don't know if it's as much about machine learning as it is about just setting up protocols and cause and effect kind of situation, sort of like the main, right? It's like, oh, well, we did this thing happened, so we have to do these other things. So we have to write some laws and we have to create some protocols and we have to, do this, and we have to have a new agency, 3-letter agency.
They're going to have a TSA for remote workers with Change Health.
Or in general, right? So it may affect all remote workers. It may affect all
workers,
all office workers or hospital. I mean, it may, it'll probably spill out into all corporate, workers, whether they're in an office or remote.
And so what would stop this from happening? And what would, right now everything's kind of like like it's kind of fucked up. Like it's like this. How do you get it straight again? Like, how do you get it so that the providers can log back into the software and file the claims with Change Health, and then, or whatever clearinghouse they decide to use, and then the insurance company will pay the providers? How do you fix this without going into that sort of dystopian place like you were talking about? Or that
I don't know. I think that what's being done in the background, I mean, I've literally talked to people who are working on getting this thing up and running again. Okay, because it's down.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Alf V. It was probably some government.
Yeah, no. Alf V is the name of the terrorist, or Black Cat.
They're a CIA cutout. Is what's his name likes to say?
Black Cat.
Yeah.
Are you serious? Like, they really use the term Black Cat.
I know,
as
right?
as the terrorist name.
Well,
the terrorist was like,
those
I'm
dudes,
Black Cat.
Those dudes were saying it might be that's the name of the campaign. By Alf V, right?
Oh, okay. All right.
So Black Cat, and the funny thing is Black Cat is associated with, that name or that term is associated with miners' strikes and things that are, a wildcat. But Black Cat is often associated with anarchist groups like the Wobblies.
The Wobblies,
right?
Which are the workers' rights.
The World Workers International or something. Yeah. Anyway,
It's so funny. Like, it's so
They
ridiculous.
did the same thing with COVID.
It's just the government.
They did the same thing. We're still seeing it. Like with COVID, they would adopt these sort of radical politics, sort of attitudes, and like that guy that allegedly burned himself the other day because of
Terrible. Situation.
yeah, I don't
Awful.
believe it for a moment, and I think that
Awful
because
situation.
his,
Awful
and I'm
story.
I'm not playing into this bullshit.
I'm just trying to protect you.
No, this is bullshit. He didn't exist. He was parroting leftist ideology while walking over to the place where he was going to burn himself, and then
Our buddy in
suddenly
Georgia, by the way, is on board with you.
Suddenly the thing goes blurry and we don't see what's going on. I'm sorry, this didn't happen.
Right. You have to have a level of skepticism and cynicism in these kinds of things. But okay,
people are going to get mad at me for something, so it might as well be something that I believe is not real.
Right.
And
there's a lot of things.
And so this thing with Change Healthcare, it was pretty believable at first, and like all these things, as it starts playing out, you start seeing the patterns. You start seeing what's going on. And you see the language, and you see these things that keep happening over and over again. And it's like, why does that remind me of something else? Oh, because it's the same goddamn playbook that they use every single fucking time.
Right. And I think that what happened was
Okay. Wiggly.
Just like, it's Friday night. I'm like, and we have this really great weekend planned here in, where we live too. It's our 1-year anniversary of closing on the new house. So we're going to go celebrate. And there's this really super awesome, fun event happening tomorrow locally. So we're going to be involved in that too. So I'm just like really anxious to go have some fun. But
I just want to get drunk. No.
One of the things that one of the things that keeps percolating in the back of my head, and I can't, because I'm not an expert in finance, and because I'm not an expert in software as a service, and because I don't know a whole lot about a lot of things, but I'm trying to educate myself about what I don't know. I think that there is no money. I think that because we live in a fiat system that is going away, that there simply is, they're just cutting off they're just cutting it off. Like they're claiming that the providers will be back online and everybody will start to get paid again by March 18th.
Right.
That's what they're claiming. But I think honestly, I just think that whoever is internationally in charge, like the Bank of International Settlements or whatever, who are controlling the World Health Organization, who then controls every health organization in, health department in every country, I think they're just like, you know what, this faction of funding is empty. Like, it's just not there. And so they're going to create a story about how hackers are demanding money and holding patients' data for ransom and locking people out. But really, the money was never there in the first place.
Right.
And so that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
It's like, where is the money? It doesn't exist. I don't think the money exists.
Well, there was that thing with the trillions of dollars that went missing in 9/11, right before 9/11.
Exactly.
Right?
We have one of those big southern bugs in here now. We must have left a window open somewhere.
Yeah, it snuck in somehow. But anyway.
But I just that's the point I'm trying to make, is that we're witnessing the great taking or this great reset or this great financial smoothing out because there is no money. Like, we're literally living in this non-existent economy. It doesn't exist anymore. And that's one thing I'm learning from this book and Collateral, which is what's used to support this idea that you would get a loan. It's like, well, if you want a loan, then tell me what you got in case you default on your loan so that I can take it, from you. It says your lender, right?
Well,
so I mean, it's just like there's no money for this particular aspect of the health industry.
I agree, and I think that
all these providers, pharmacies, labs, doctors, clinics, providers, they're all shut out.
Right. Because there's something going on, like you said, a reset, financial reset in the background. And I think that's correct. And these people that have been working on, like I said, I interrupted myself earlier. I know people who are working this weekend to get this thing back up and running. And I think what's going on is that it's not necessarily, and they may not even know this, that they're not just getting things set up to fix the problem, but they're setting it up for the next phase or the next,
exactly.
set, right?
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. And I was trying to go there too. And
we're still trying to process this.
We're figuring this out too. And
also
again,
the fact that no one's talking about it is,
and that was the next thing that I wanted to say
is like the real issue.
Right. And I think, and again, this is us, we're just like putting out these ideas, and we're not, we have some facts to go on. We have some histories to go on. We have things that we can, base our ideas on. So we're not just like throwing shit out like this is the Illuminati bullshit, right? This is like, this is a real thing that's happening. We don't know exactly, but we're, proposing ideas of like what could be and might be and most possibly are taking place. As we know, with a lot of the operations like COVID and 9/11 and stuff, they're using subterfuge and they're hiding information, but they're also relying on the fact that people don't know about a given situation. I mean, like, climate change, and they'll tell you, oh, well, you're not a climate scientist, so you can't say anything about this, so you can't have an opinion. Well, people are, education has been for shit for the last 30 years. People don't know about complicated financial transactions like David Rogers Webb. Right. People don't know about like advanced abstract science that they can like just go, oh yeah, that's all a lie because, I know X, Y, and Z. This is, we've been kept purposely in the dark on things. We have been kept purposely ignorant on a lot of subjects so that we cannot understand what they're doing in the background because they're pulling some bullshit in the background like they did with the financial situation in 2008.
Right.
Those things were so complicated, and Wem talks about some of this, that the ordinary citizen wouldn't understand what the fuck is going on. Most people don't. I mean, even smart people in the industry don't.
That's why this whole thing with the story of Change Healthcare being hacked by terrorists holding patient data for ransom.
It's a nice narrative.
For ransom and then locking doctors out of their own systems so that they can get paid. That's an easy thing to present to the public. Like you just said, it's easy to understand. But what I want to do is just kind of slowly pick it apart. Like, I don't want to be David Rogers Webb about this. What I want to do is just say, okay, did brown people grab box cutters and take some of the most sophisticated aircraft in history and slam it through buildings? No, they didn't. Okay, well, it's the same thing. This is very sophisticated software programming, hackers or terrorists did not hack into it. What we have is a problem where I think Change Healthcare and insurance companies, let me try to process this. What did we learn about insurance companies over the last 2 years? They were starting to have to pay out more benefits than they've ever paid out in the history of the world. There are some people who don't believe this story, but I do. More people were dying for some reason or getting very, very sick and made permanently disabled and unable to go to work. So the insurance companies that they had signed up for when they were hired at their jobs were now paying out benefits. The insurance companies are like, we are losing so much money over the last couple of years paying out all these death benefits, all these disability benefits. This is insane. More than they ever have in the history since like the Society of Actuaries was founded, which was like the 1800s or something. And they're the ones that hold the data. So,
or at
let's-
least analyze
or
it.
at least analyze it,
Mhm.
not hold it, but do analyze it and keep good records of it. So let's take that information and somehow apply it to this story. If insurance companies are like, we're becoming less and less solvent, like we are paying so much money out to these, for these death benefits and disability benefits, we are running out of money. Where can we save money?
Where can we make money?
Or where can we make money? Or where can we just make it so that we're not shelling out even more money? I know, let's stop paying pharmacists. Let's stop paying the alive patients who are needing care and needing to have us cover their, their prescriptions or their physical therapy or their cancer treatment or whatever. Okay, let's stop doing that, and that'll help us with our budget a little bit. And so they just cut off the Change Healthcare and said, we're not doing anymore. And Change Healthcare is like, but I've got all these claims that I'm sending you. Okay, I think that's what it is. I think that might be it as well as all the stuff that David Webb talks about, with the Bank of International Settlements and all of these crazy, creating money out of nothing kind of thing. All right. So, but I think because nobody believes the ransom hack story. Nobody believes that.
Well, they barely covered it in that meeting that I was talking about. That
right.
The United Health Group meeting.
Right.
So they barely touched on that.
But what we do know, which is a fact, and it doesn't matter if they're paying out more benefits because of COVID situations or vaccine situations or whatever the reason is, we just know that it is a cold, hard fact that insurance companies across the board are now paying out more benefits to their patients or to patients than they've ever paid in the history of the world. So they're running out of money.
Right. So they're screaming, we need something to change here so that we can start making money again. So it could be that this is part of that, that campaign to reestablish a means for them to make money, because the last campaign fucked them over without them realizing that or maybe they did know it was going to happen, but I don't think they,
I don't know.
And, so new policy gets set up, new laws get set up. Let me go back to what I was saying about Katrina. I remember being a new homeowner around the time of Katrina in San Francisco. And I was talking to my insurance agent who handled my homeowners insurance. And she was talking about how the insurance industry was losing lots of money because of that storm, and that new things were being put, new policies or new protocols were being put into place, making it so the consumer has to pay more again.
We pay a lot in
we
just
do.
wind insurance.
Yeah, because of that.
It's insane how much we pay.
And
Never.
We're basically paying into a system that's basically we're covering all their losses and paying for future losses as well.
If we ever need.
Right. Well, no, I mean for their future losses.
Yeah.
Right. Because it may be something in another state or, whatever.
Right.
So because these companies are national or international in some cases. And so what it is they're basically creating a situation so that they can make up for the losses that took place from these campaigns that go on, that they may not even be a part of.
Right. So
it's like, okay,
loss that all the insurance companies, for individual people, for individuals, these insurance companies took huge hits.
Well, I can imagine that, like
over the last couple of years,
I can imagine something going on, something like this, like, the insurance industry goes to the state, the government, and says,
bail us out.
you helped out the pharmaceutical companies
exactly
4 years ago, or just more recently, 2 years ago, with this whole COVID bullshit, and it fucked us over. So now you got to turn around and make it so that we can get paid back for all those losses that we incurred because of that one. It's like, if you're going to help those guys out, we're part of this deal too.
Exactly.
And we need our share. So,
Right.
do something so that we can start making our money back.
Right. So I think we may have been able to synthesize it a little bit on this Friday night. And, I don't know if individuals who work in the industry and who maybe, have like, say you're a nurse and you provide patient care to, all these patients, and then you put in your report at the end of the day to your administrator, and then your administrator logs into the software and puts in all of the patient information along with their insurance. And then that inputted information goes through Change Healthcare and then goes to the insurance company, and then the insurance company pays it. So everything that I just described, I don't know if those individuals, like the nurses and the caregivers and all that, I don't know if they're really going to be affected, or if it's just like an administrative thing.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be affected.
The only way that they're really going to be affected is if all of these clinics and these smaller hospitals that are part, how like you have like a big giant company and it's got smaller locations throughout the country. And then they say, well, for budgetary purposes, we need to close down all of our smaller operations. And then we're just going to have one big main company that stays. So like with Kaiser, there's like teeny little Kaiser hospitals all throughout the Bay Area, all throughout California, up and down the coast. Maybe all those small little ones will go away, and the bigger ones in Los Angeles and San Francisco will stay.
Yeah,
so
it's job loss is going to happen.
So there may be job loss.
Well, and I think that there will be
maybe
job loss, but there will definitely be more work for every person. So
if there isn't job loss, there's going to be more work.
Right. So they're going to be required to do even more things. So, for instance, like that program that I was talking about, where it was, it was to review doctors' performance. Administrators were doing their normal job plus doing the input for that information as well. So they were setting up the review times using this software to do it, but also they were dealing with, the crises that go on every day in a hospital or a medical facility. So they're already doing their job plus an additional job that they didn't sign up for. And I think what's going to happen is there's going to be yet another layer of work that is going to be placed on the heads of these individuals who are already overworked and underpaid.
Right. So we'll see what happens. But there was one more person that you mentioned who was working in who you work with now.
Oh yeah. So in a meeting today, somebody made the comparison between this situation in 9/11 without even really thinking about it. I think he was working for Northwest Airlines at the time, and he was on the customer facing side, and he was talking to somebody who's dealing with the back end of like trying to put this all together again. So she's working this weekend. And he's like, yeah, I understand where you are right now. I was working for Northwest Airlines, customer facing, and like dealing with helping people, get home and get out of airports.
After the planes had been grounded.
Yeah, after
everything was grounded.
Right?
Remember that?
And he's like, it was like 2 weeks of just hell, right? And so from, that's the other thing that's really just like really, the worst part of this whole thing is it's, like I was telling you, the executives looked very cool and relaxed, right? They're not putting in overtime. They're not, they might be like on call to like take calls and do meetings, but it's not like the workers that are going to be, putting this thing back together. They've been working 2 weeks already, and they're, going into a third week of this kind of like, balls to the wall kind of work, where they're just like, there's very little sleep. There's no weekends. And so it's being put on the workers again, like it always is, or it's being put on, whoever, every one of these situations always comes down to people who are working to, just make a living, make it harder for them to do their life, to have their life.
Yeah.
So.
But I don't know if there's like a whole reason to get like really hysterical or
No, this isn't a hysterical thing.
this thing that happened with Change Health. It's big, it's huge, and it will definitely change the way that the medical industry gets paid and who works in the medical industry and how it operates and the whole software programs and the security protocol involved, because you can't have another attack on our democracy. I mean, our healthcare. So they're going to create these new safety protocols, and so it's basically going to be just like
security. Yeah.
The insecurity protocols. It's going to be like the TSA for the healthcare industry. I don't know how they're going to do it, but that's what it is. Well, it's going to be the TSA for the healthcare industry. A whole new opportunity for certain people to earn an income. Probably people who are in the tech industry
and
somehow.
Security tech, and there's going to be a whole new industry that's created out of this, right? And I think my final thought on this is that it's not going to be apparent or obvious. It's only going to be apparent and obvious to people who are in it, right? And just like this story is kind of not really being promoted. It's not out there a lot. It may be mentioned in the mainstream news, but it's not it's not being promoted like 9/11 was. So the effects are going to be just as hidden as the story itself.
Exactly. Thank you for hanging out with us today for 90 minutes this afternoon or this evening on a Friday night. I hope that everybody is doing well. And, we're, like I said, we are very happy to be in our new domain in the Gulf Coast. Probably the happiest we've ever been, right? So, but this thing, we felt that it needed some observation and some transparency and
at least talking about
it. And
to
try to synthesize the information. It seems kind of boring, I know, but it's definitely not one of these. We're definitely not the kind of people that will, rush to the screen and try to, put the fear of God in you. That's not how we operate on this platform. So if you like that kind of delivery, where we just kind of try to talk things through and figure it out, please support us.
Yeah.
Please help us out.
We're more along the lines of, I call bullshit on that. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. That too, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bullshit.
Yeah. And that's what our job is. We detect the bullshit detectors.
Yeah. So hopefully you get something out of tonight's broadcast. We appreciate you joining today. Thank you for making the nice comment, Liv. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
So as we discussed, that's a really good thing to say, because that's often how we come to ideas about our personal life, our future, what we want to do with, in the future for anything, we just kind of talk it through and figure it out. It's good to have that kind of communication. So anyway.
All right. Well, thanks and have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah. Have a good weekend.
And we'll see you at the next bookmark whenever we feel like it.
Okay. Bye. Thanks for joining.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bookmark is made possible by our patrons and supporters. You can help us continue our work by becoming a patron at patreon.com/bookofhours. Join Rockfin or leave us a tip at rockfin.com/bookofhours, or leave us a one-time donation at paypal.me/bookofhours. Or you can use Cash App. Thank you.